Good day everyone. Today's session is about the other classical study which was used to increase the efficiency of the employees, that is the Hawthorne studies. The learning objective of today's session is to understand the importance of Hawthorne studies to improve the efficiency of employees. The session outcome of today's session is the students would understood the importance of Hawthorne studies to improve the efficiency of employees. In the 20th century, few idealists realized that people do not always work for money, and they thought of certain non-material factors may motivate the workers to work. Between 1924 to 27, there was a regular disturbance in the Hawthorne works of Western Electric Company, which was having around 30,000 employees who were working on assembly of telephone, necessitating a thorough investigation of the relationship between production and various factors of efficiency. So the Hawthorne Electrical Company requested University professor Elton Mayo to evaluate the employees' performance on the work and how it can be optimized. Hence, the Hawthorne study started in the year 1927. The Hawthorne studies are divided into 5 major parts. Each part is an outgrowth of the preceding one. In many respects, each study follows the other logically. The 5 studies are: first one, experiment on elimination. Second is the relay assembly test room experiment. Again, it consists of second relay assembly test room and the mica splitting test room. And the third one is the mass interview program. Fourth is the bank wiring observation room. And the fifth major study was the personal counseling. Let us look in detail about the first method of this Hawthorne study is the experiment on elimination. In the first stage, psychologists wanted to find out the relationship between workers and management and optimal eliminations for higher efficiency. In the controlled and experimental conditions, all factors remained constant except elimination. Various levels of average elimination varied from time to time. The elimination experiment assumed that the production would be minimum under the best lighting conditions. To verify the assumptions, the workers were assigned with 3 different jobs. They are inspection of small parts. The workers who are involved in this are called as inspectors. Second type of job is the assemblies of relay. The workers were called as assemblers. And the third type of job was winding the coils. The workers were considered as winders. Production in these jobs were measured carefully under 4 controlled conditions, which varied from low to high intensity of elimination to find out the relation between efficiency and elimination. The results revealed that among the inspectors, production went up irrespective of elimination, whereas among assemblers, production continued to increase. And in case of coil winders also, production increased and production was not decreased when the elimination was decreased. Thus, in general, it was noted that production increased invariably with and without the increment of elimination. Whereas in the second study, 2 groups of coil winders were subjects with similar experience and capacity. The experimental group coil winders first worked under an illumination of 24-foot candle and then doubled and finally tripled. Whereas the control group workers worked throughout the experiment under an illumination of 24-foot candles. The results showed that the production of both the experimental group and the control group increased significantly. Whereas in the third experiment on illumination, which was conducted using artificial light, control group workers worked under a constant intensity of 10-foot candles. Test group first started with 10 foot and then intensity was reduced by 1 foot candle per period until they were working under only 3-foot candles. The results showed that both the groups increased their efficiency slightly. Whereas in the fourth study on experiment on illumination, 2 girls volunteered to work under conditions equivalent to ordinary moonlight. The findings suggested that girls were as efficient under moonlight conditions and reported no eye strain and less fatigue when working under bright light also. And the fifth study led to the conclusion that an entirely new approach to the problem was necessary. So, in the fifth study, the coil winding girls were asked to comment on different intensities of light. The light bulbs were changed in the experiment, but the same intensity was kept. In the last part of the experiment, the illumination was decreased. The finding of this study showed that girls commented favorably on the increased illumination and also to light remained constant. From these 5 experiments relating to the increase and decrease in illumination, it was noted that the production of the workers increased invariably with and without the increment of illumination. The confusing results obtained from these 5 studies led to the apprehension of the operation of some non-material factors, and the results led to the second study called Relay Assembly Test Room Study. In the Relay Assembly Test Room experiment, an effort was made to test the hypothesis production would be higher under an improved incentive system and under a shorter work week with rest and each lunch periods. The task was to assemble small telephone relay because it is simple and easily repetitive work and require no machinery. 2 experienced workers were invited to participate and they then selected the other subjects in the experiment. The experiment had 13 test periods. In the period 1, accurate measure of each girl's production under a typical work conditions. Whereas in the period 2, in order to determine the effects of a change in workplace upon production. In period 3, they introduced a change in the method of payment. In period 4, introduction of 2 rest pauses of 5 minutes each. In period 5, the rest periods were increased to 10 minutes. In period 6, which had 6 rest pauses of 5 minutes each. In period 7, rest pauses were given and free mid-morning lunch was added. In period 8, which was similar to period 7, that is, rest pauses were given and even the mid-morning lunch was also continued. In period 9, it was like period 8 only, like rest pauses and the mid-morning lunch were provided. And whereas in period 10, again the same had continued. Period 11, wherein they've introduced 5-day work per week rather than 6 days. Whereas in period 12, which was similar to period 3, that is, introduced a change in the method of payment. And in period 13, which was similar to period 7 and 10, that is, rest pauses and midday and free mid-morning lunch were provided. Along with that, operators provided the morning food also. In the extension of the results of the study produced extremely increasing results. Each test period had higher production than the preceding one. Moreover, the spontaneous remarks, free conversation and behavior of the workers revealed a thorough change in the social atmosphere of the group. The extension of the relay assembly test room was the second relay assembly test room experiment. Here, the original relay assembly test group had a change of environment as well as payments, whereas the second relay assembly test group had only a change of payment. 5 experienced operators were put on a payment basis similar to that of the original group but were kept in the factory. The findings of the study suggested that group showed an increase in production almost by 12% and continued at the same level. But when the group went back to the original method of payment, there was a drop in the production. And one more important study is the Mica splitting test room. The purpose of this experiment is to study the effects of the change in payment in the test room. 5 operators participated in the experiment, that is, 2 were selected at random and these 2 selected the other. Production increased by an average of 15% in 14 months. In the relay assembly test room, production rose to 30%. Thus, 15% raise in production is the maximum that can be attributed to change in financial incentives. The remainder was attributed to other factors. This experiment was continued for 5 years. The situation and atmosphere of the testing room was very normal and similar to the factory. Psychologists were in charge of observation and also worked as supervisors and tried to keep a healthy relation with workers. That is, by listening to their complaints and grievances, giving them free advice and information, and being friendly and intimate with workers. The finding of this Mica splitting test room was attitude between the workers and supervisor was very congenial, that is the pleasant. Morale, that is the confidence of the group, was high. Solidarity, that is the unity, and loyalty, that is how faithful they are to the group, was marked, and production was rose. To summarize this session, Hawthorne study started in 1927 at Hawthorne Works of Western Electric Company by Professor Elton Mayo. The Hawthorne studies were divided into 5 major parts. In this session, we learnt about the experiment on illumination, relay assembly test room experiment, in that again the second relay assembly test room, and the Mica splitting test room. Thank you.